Hello everyone, I hope today finds you well. I'm the introverted astrologer and I've been putting together a series of videos which looks at the British royal family over the next year. Now today I'm picking out the main themes of Queen Consort Camilla's year ahead. And there's something I've seen in her solar return which has been quite startling. And it concerns Mars, Uranus and Algol, that volatile combination with great unpredictability. I'd personally hoped that Queen Camilla had some happy times ahead, a reprieve after the King's health trials. And so today we'll be flying through various charts as we take a look at what's going on. As there's no way I can cover everything in one video, I'll pick out the main themes that I can see coming, and I thought I'd start with this chart, which is Queen Camilla's solar return and covers the period from July 2024 through to July of 2025. A couple of things are immediately springing to attention from this standalone solar return. It's showing us that Queen Camilla's 6th house of health and service is being brought to prominence during this period. That's because it has a Capricorn ascendant, and Capricorn is the sign on the cusp of Queen Camilla's natal chart, 6th house. And so the next thing that we'll do is focus on any exact or near exact aspects that we can find. I'm sure you can spot some yourself, because we do have a few. We have this Uranus Mars and the malefic fixed star Algol all around 26 degrees of Taurus. This Mars is in its detriment in Taurus, and so that is noteworthy. The solar return sun is in the 7th house and it does make quite a few aspects. But the only exact aspect involves this square to the asteroid Chiron, because they are both at 23 odd degrees. And we also have an exact inconjunct or quincunx between this Mercury and the Saturn. Finally, the moon in this chart is in the sign of Scorpio, and although it makes no exact aspects, we could anticipate some difficult and intense emotions this year, because Scorpio is the sign of the moon's fall. The moon is not happy in that intense and crisis-ridden background energy. So we can already tell that themes of work, of duty, of health are going to be prominent. The Uranus-Mars Algol is bringing in an erratic or unpredictable energy. We know that this combination can be headstrong and willful, and it's an aspect that can also be associated with accidents, with violence, with surgery, and we also know that Algol can feature prominently in the charts of the royal family at times of big events. This combination of Saturn and Mercury is showing a year of detailed, laboured and possibly pessimistic thinking. This Mercury would actually be in the 8th whole sign house, and it does exactly square the midheaven axis, and that Sun Chiron exact square can indicate where we're wounded, and this can often be in the physical sense, as in illness or injury. On seeing some of these aspects, I decided to pull in a couple of the health-related asteroids, and these include Hygeia, Asclepius and Apollo. And you can see here that Hygeia is exactly square to Pluto, and Asclepius is exactly opposite Neptune. Now, are these connections going to become more significant as we pull in the natal chart? And so here we have Camilla's natal chart in the centre, and the solar return planets are placed around the outer edge with the pale blue background. I was relieved to see that the returns Jupiter is on Camilla's natal Mars, and this is an aspect which speaks of exuberance, of vitality, of buoyancy. We knew that the solar returns moon in Scorpio might be showing some difficult emotions this year, but that too is on Camilla's natal Jupiter, and the presence of Jupiter, the benefic, making these interconnections is going to offset some of the more sinister undertones of the return. In fact, the natal Jupiter is near the midheaven of the solar return chart, and so this may well mark some happiness or optimism, particularly in the public domain and whilst carrying out visible public duties. I remained concerned about a couple of things. For example, you can see that the Queen's natal Chiron opposes the return's Hygeia, and we have a grand cross scenario playing out with Venus and Pluto too, so some concerns about health still remain. And so I decided to double check with the Converse solar return. Queen Camilla turned 77 in July of 2024, and if we step back 77 years in time before her birthday, we are looking at a date of 1870. And so the central chart shows Camilla's natal chart, and around the outer edge in pale blue you can see the return planets for that time. We can pick up some repeating themes here. For example, we have Uranus and Mars coming together again. This aspect, which is so volatile and erratic. The return's Saturn is also very closely implicated with this Uranus-Mars aspect because of that very tight opposition. And so perhaps we are seeing here a sudden unexpected incident or intervention of some kind. The health asteroid Hygeia is within a degree of Camilla's natal sun. We can often find Hygeia involved during lengthy health trials, and so this is important. And another of the health asteroids, Asclepius, who was Hygeia's father and the god of medicine, is on that important axis with the midheaven. So this is being brought to prominence too. And so again we have health, medical issues being brought to prominence. Natal Jupiter is on the ascendant of the return, which falls in Camilla's fourth house of family, of roots and security. So we are seeing twin themes here of problems and issues, of something unexpected, and at the same time we do have prominent connections with more positive planets such as Jupiter. There is enjoyment and happiness here, possibly even joy and cause for celebrations within family circles. Nonetheless, the health concerns remain. Uranus-Mars may even indicate surgery. If that is the case, there are also indications that the outcome could be positive. I'd also add that Mars in a solar return can sometimes show events that relate to our suns, and we need to bear this in mind too. I suspect these health themes continue, possibly even into 2026, because these Mars-Hygeia interconnections remain. For example, this is her Converse solar return, which ties in with the period of July 2025 to July of 2026. Once again, Camilla's natal chart is in the centre, and the return's planets and points are situated outside the inner circle with a pale blue background. And you can see here that Hygeia and natal Mars are pulled together again, and they feature prominently on the midheaven of the solar return, so we can be sure that something is up. And the return's Saturn opposing that natal Mars. Pluto-Venus is looking prominent too, and so here we could see an intensification of relationship issues, of deep and sometimes even dark emotions, of regeneration. Uranus to natal Mercury is flagging up potential issues of sudden, unexpected communication, news. I wondered whether the Queen Consort's progressions or solar arcs would give us a little more detail. And you can see here her chart in the centre, with the progressed planets around the outer edge in green and the solar arc positions in blue. We can see that her progressed Sun is slowly edging away from the precise conjunction it was making with her natal Neptune. The Sun can sometimes represent our husband, and Neptune dissolves, confuses, disorientates. But the sun also can represent our consciousness, what we are here for, and the connection with Neptune can infuse our life journey with more spiritual overtones. It's very apt that this conjunction is now waning in intensity and has passed the point of exactitude. But if we look to the Queen's progressed Mercury, that is slowly edging into a conjunction with her natal Chiron, an asteroid which speaks of hurts and wounding and can sometimes speak of health too. As of the 1st of October 2024, progressed Mercury is at just over 1 degree of Scorpio, and so its precise conjunction with Chiron won't be exact until very late in 2025. But as this conjunction comes within a degree of orb, we may expect to see some of its effects on our life. And so this contact is speaking of our mental faculties, and it is drawing together with this the part of us which is wounded. And so we might increasingly uncover ways to mentally comprehend and articulate our historic hurts and pains. We could feel drawn to describe the wounds that we have incurred. In Camilla's case, that natal Chiron is square to her ascendant, and so there have doubtless been issues around physical body, perhaps some early bullying, and feeling inadequate in terms of her physical presentation or her appearance. This progression may reignite these issues as part of the process of bringing the difficulties to light. And in fact, Camilla has quite a few placements in her chart and in water signs where we might anticipate quite a psychic, intuitive streak to her nature. Her progressed moon is moving through the relatively tranquil pastures of Taurus, and it's now in the house that we associate with our public role, with our career, our social standing. This is the 10th house. And as we arrive at the date of 1st of October 2024, we can see that this progressed moon is drawing into a square with Camilla's natal ascendant. This can be quite a stressful aspect, and we are anticipating that scheduled royal trip to Australia between the 18th and the 26th of October, and so that's quite a long tour, and I think Camilla is likely going to be feeling worn out, emotionally drained and out of sorts as we move further into October. These aspects that the progressed moon makes are relatively fleeting in the scheme of things and lasting typically a few weeks. There will be a point in 2025 when that progressed moon begins to square her natal Saturn. This will probably mark a time of overwork, of being under the weather perhaps. It can be quite a depressing few weeks, and we can feel quite hard done by. This will correspond with the months of February, March 2025. There will be simultaneous sextiles between that progressed moon and her natal moon and Venus, and so comfort and support that she seeks from family and friends, from her network, may help offset some of the weariness of the Moon-Saturn contact. And as we move into April and May of 2025, that progressed moon will begin to square natal Pluto. And so this can show more difficult emotions, a feeling that things are up in the air, and this can sometimes be emotionally upsetting. If we look at Camilla's progressed ascendant and midheaven, it's clear that they will change sign in the next 2 or 3 years. And I think that 2026 and 2027 are going to be very significant years for Camilla. We'd already noticed that the king has big changes during this period, and just like the king, it won't be long before transiting Pluto starts nudging at the edge of the Queen's 7th house cusp, her descendant, because both her and the king have an early Leo ascendant. So all that Plutonian energy of crisis, transformation and regeneration will be refining her formal alliances, her marriage perhaps, and her one-to-one relationships, because these are what the 7th house represents. Now, she does have a few solar arc aspects that become exact, but they're not particularly major, and they are not as difficult as the ones that she has now left behind her. The solar arcs that the Queen has left behind her now were much more difficult, and they included Saturn to her Sun, her Moon to Uranus, indicating difficulties and shocking upsets. In the near future, we can see that the solar arc ascendant will aspect her natal Mercury, indicating a period when communication and interaction with the environment will be key. It's very difficult to say exactly when a solar arc aspect will play out over roughly a 1-year period, but we can make note that these aspects will be exact somewhere around January, February 2025. Do any of the Queen Consort's transits from the outer planets fill us in a little more on this volatile Mars-Uranus connection that we've seen in the returns? Well, no, not really. The transiting planets are placed around Camilla's natal chart in the centre, and we can see that Jupiter, which is currently in Gemini, will move through her 12th house with Cancer on the cusp later next year. In fact, Jupiter will end up making a trine with her natal Jupiter, and it will also make contact with the Queen Consort's Sun. And so we certainly wouldn't be anticipating problems there. Saturn has been moving through Camilla's 8th house and is not going to make lengthy ongoing contact with any key points. The same can be said of Neptune. This planet will edge out of late Pisces and move into the early degrees of Aries, but it will only get up to 2 degrees, and so again there isn't anything particularly noteworthy. Transiting Uranus will conjunct her North Node by mid-2025, but it will touch upon very little else, and so again we are none the wiser. We do know that transiting Pluto will be moving through the very early degrees of Aquarius throughout 2025, and by May it will have reached almost 4 degrees of Aquarius. But provided that Queen Camilla's birth time is somewhat accurate, she may well not experience the impact of Pluto in this 7th house until 2026. And it's actually Chiron that will make the strongest ongoing aspect with Camilla's natal chart, because it will again square her Sun this year. This has been an ongoing transit for Camilla, which first started in mid-2024, and this slightly more stressful transit will continue even into 2026. And so we've not really been filled in very much by looking at the outer transits. However, there are 2 things that we've not included, and one of those is transiting Mars. We know that Mars is moving through Cancer at the moment, but as we reach early December, transiting Mars will appear to stand still and move backwards, and the point at which it makes this retrograde station is around 6 degrees of Leo, and then it will appear to backtrack through a good portion of Cancer, and this is potentially more difficult for Camilla and her husband because Cancer is the sign on the cusp of their 12th house, and Mars in the 12th house can be difficult. The 12th house involves hidden things, hidden enemies, poor health, seclusion or isolation, and Mars spending a long time in your 12th house is not desirable. We may also feel like our hands are tied when Mars is in the 12th house, because Mars is unable to express itself assertively, so we could shoot ourselves in the foot. This Mars retrograde cycle will be ongoing for Camilla for the first few months of 2025, taking us through to very late April. And finally, of course, we are now in eclipse season, and we have a solar eclipse which will take place around 10 degrees of Libra, and so it falls on a very sensitive part. of Queen Camilla's chart. It also impacts the charts of other members of the royal family, including Prince William and Princess Catherine. The energy of this particular eclipse is speaking of separations, of beginnings and endings, potentially with some sadness and certainly with low physical energy. Eclipses can particularly impact the charts of royal families, rulers of a country, and the country's birth chart. And so we need to be vigilant around this time. I wish I could tell you more about how Mars, Uranus, Algol are going to play out, but exasperating as this is, Uranus is unpredictable, and so we'll have to carefully watch between now and around July of 2025. And of course, we also have that forthcoming solar eclipse in October, which impacts on quite a few of the royal family charts. I'll carry on focusing on the royal family over the next few weeks, and my next video will look at Princess Catherine. We'll see how 2025 will pan out for this lady. Between now and then, take very good care of yourselves, and God bless you all.